And we're live. And
hi. Hey, everybody.
I spent almost 10 minutes creating that intro video thing.
Wow.
Yes.
It was good.
Tim, that's awesome.
Yeah.
But anyway, today's guest is the multi-talented, infamously famous James Sopp, who happens to be one of the commenters on our first show. And yeah, he's based somewhere in the UK in a secret bunker. But I managed to ask him an interesting question. So this is where I'm hoping you know. Do you know Star Wars, even vaguely?
Little bit.
Little bit. Which Star Wars character would you most like to go on a date with?
Ooh. On a date with her? Are we talking about a relationship date or just a lad's date or?
Oh, well.
Man date.
Both answers. Let's learn about James, the interesting one.
Okay, so if I'm going to go on a man date, then it would have to be Boba Fett. I'm a huge fan of Boba Fett. I like guys who. That sounds wrong. I like who. Shall we? There's a breaking news for you. So I like rule breakers. I like people who kind of dip their toes on the other side of the lines every now and again. So yeah, Boba Fett, he's always going to be up there. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know if there's that many female characters in Star Wars that I'd necessarily want to go on a date with. I think you've got to say Leia, really, haven't you?
Well, I mean, Padme maybe if you're in the original film, prequel films, but she did end up going out with a very much younger man, so I don't know what that says about her really. I think Leia's probably the most reliable choice in the.
That's a great question, Tim.
So now we've done with this important question, we can end the interview. No. We can, can you start by describing you had a big life change around 2000 and something or other. Can you describe what your life was and what suddenly caused your life to change and what you became? Sounds very
it sounds very transitional. So in 2012 I was a landscaper, fairly successful, self-employed around my local area, prestigious clients, big properties. And it was my wife's birthday, and I decided to cut corners, shall we say. That's not meant to be a pun, but it worked out quite nicely. I basically tried to get home a lot quicker than I should have been, and I forgot to put the brake on my ride-on lawnmower. And as it rolled out the back of the van, I tried to catch it. And needless to say, I'm not that big. And subsequently, my back went pop in a few different places. So I drove myself to the hospital. When I got there, the bedside manner from the nurse was, "Well, that's your business gone. Sorry about that." So as I was recovering, I thought, well, what am I going to do? I've got a young baby, a wife whose birthday it is. I sat there for a couple of days pondering about, life, the universe and everything else. And I was watching telly and thought, how hard can that be? I decided to launch myself into my next day dream of a career in TV. Yeah. That was it. But I'd never used a Mac. I'd never used a piece like a laptop or anything. I knew nothing about video. I knew nothing about, editing.
Mm-hmm. So what do you do? If I can interrupt you, James. So exactly what do you do for those watching? What do you or did you do in television?
So I started off as an edit assistant, or I think in America they're assistant editors. And I trained with loads of different producers, directors, how to kind of edit programs. And as it built and built, I worked on, I kind of started off as a T-boy first, but my first job was straight in at the BBC. I spent 4 years on a daytime program called Flog It, which is an antiques show. You go around and, you know, people come and meet you and sell their stuff. And it's a brilliant show. You know, it's a fantastic machine to work on as well, because you learn so much. So I spent 4 years working there and training to be an editor, learning all the stuff from the BBC. So it was great.
Yeah. So for people who don't know or may not know, editing is not as easy as it seems. We have the apps today and all of that, but when you're working at an editing bay, it's easy to direct. I find for me, I can direct really well, but laying down the footage takes a lot of creativity. So hat tip to you, because you're basically self-taught then.
Yeah. So I as I said, you know, I started up at the bottom making cups of tea and toast for people who are like 10 years my junior, because I kind of felt that, you know, when you go into a business like that, you kind of have to start off at the bottom. You can't go in with any airs or graces, similar to social media as well. You can't start off a journey without knowing where you've come from, if that makes sense. So I threw myself into it, and it's been a whirlwind of an adventure. I know before this, I was speaking to Tim earlier in the week, and as I said, I'd spent 4 years on that program, and then I had to leave. Unfortunately, I had a crisis. It sounds a bit of a dramatic thing, but I got a phone call one day. My dad had been diagnosed with leukemia when I was younger. My mum had called me up and said, right, you need to get to the hospital because unfortunately he's not going to make it through the night. But when I got there, I also found my aunt in there as well. And unfortunately, she'd been diagnosed with pancreatic cancer 5 weeks previously as well. And so she passed on the Friday, my dad passed on the Monday. And you go back into that bubble for a couple of weeks, and then you go back to work. You think everything's fine. And then it kind of catches up with you a year later, and you realize that not everything was fine, unfortunately. So I kind of, you know, for want of a better word, imploded a little bit. But I decided, do you know what? I've overcome all these hurdles already, so I'm just gonna go again. Let's see what we can do. So yeah, I took some time out, kind of found what it was that I was trying to be, you know, just tried to conquer everything as best as I could for the time being. And I managed to get back into the BBC a year later, and I started on Radio 4, which is one of our big network national radio station. And I think it was in my first week, I started up and you know, I walked in, nobody was there. I look like this, obviously. I don't, you know, Radio 4 is quite a highbrow radio station. I walk in wearing my hoodie and my baseball caps and stuff. I was like, where is everybody? And they're like, oh, we have what's called the commissioning round. And the commissioning round is where the bigwigs come down from London. They hear all the pitches and the ideas. And I was like, oh, I'll have a go at that one day. And they said, well, why don't you go and have a go? So I went down to this room, and there's everybody sat in this big sort of circle. And he's going, has anybody got any ideas? And of course, I rock up. I was like, yeah, I've got an idea. And everyone's like, oh, okay. I said, there needs to be a program on men's health. It needs to be like something that guys can go to and listen to, so that they know that they're not struggling alone. There was a lot of stuff going on in the UK at the time with sports stars and various different things. So I said, well, you know, there needs to be a program on men's health. And everyone's like, no. And he went, that's a great idea. Let's do that. And so on my first week in Radio 4, I got a program commissioned, and they made it into 3 programs, fast-tracked it, and yeah, it went out straight away. Unfortunately, I never got the opportunity to work on it because I went on to other things afterwards. But yeah, it was another kind of...
Yeah, that's pretty amazing. So was your inspiration for the men's health, because I agree with you, there's not a lot of that, was it because of what you personally were experiencing with the losses?
Yeah, definitely. I think from a personal point of view, I was spending, you know, when you go through something like that, you can't really explain it to a lot of people. You sit there of an evening, and even though you want to go to sleep, you're kind of like, your brain just doesn't stop firing, and it's just going off everywhere. And I was looking on the internet for various different support groups, or trying to find a reason as to what was actually going on, and I couldn't find anything. I could find loads of things for shall we say, the darker side of mental health, but there was nothing that kind of really wanted to break the mold a little bit. So yeah, that's where it came from, really. And I was blessed to be in, I kind of look at it as, I was blessed to be in a bad place to be able to find good for others. I know it sounds cliche and a little bit, but
no, true. It's very true.
Yeah. What is one of your favorite guests that was on that show? I know you said you didn't get to be part of it too much, but did they bring guests on, and who was one of your favorite?
It was predominantly it was like a panel kind of group. So they had like a psychologist, they had a presenter, and then they had like another guy as well speaking. But I think it was one of those programs that you could listen to it, but for me, it wasn't quite what I had envisaged anyway. It was quite, it's nice to hear that something good was coming out of it. But from a personal point of view, I was like, well, it didn't really kind of want to, it wasn't aimed at the people that I wanted to kind of hit. So.
Okay. What was your vision?
It's similar, I suppose, in a weird way. It was similar to people like me. It was guys that were tradesmen. It was builders. It was foremen, delivery drivers. All of these kind of general Joe public. As far as I was, it was that kind of people who you could we guys are predominantly we're all very macho. We all kind of like we're crack on and all of that. I think. Like that to a degree, to be honest. I don't think it makes any difference whether you're female or male. I think everybody kind of keeps themselves to themselves and keeps going and going. But guys, we have this kind of, I don't know, ethos that you can't show your inner feelings, for want of a better. But I think it's really important. So I kind of I always class audio as the fourth dimension. Because I always learned that in TV you could show a picture to everybody and everybody would see the same thing. But the moment you get into audio, you play the same thing, everybody has a different perception, and then podcasts and things like that as well. So yeah, and I found it quite a lot more private as well. So if somebody's struggling, they could put it on their phone, they could put it on their whatever device they've got, and be able to just have it, and nobody will know what they're listening to or where they're kind of getting support from. Whereas if you're going to YouTube, there's a browser history, there's always someone looking over your shoulder. So I always prefer audio.
So
go ahead, Tim. Sorry.
Well, no, I was going to transition onto something else. So if you want to keep on this topic.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Let me. You know what? You just went. I'm just kidding. There was, because it's a serious thing. He just really talked about. He's talking about the magnitude of not one loss, but two within a day span. There are many people today experiencing that. So if I may, just for a few minutes, I don't want to just touch on it and move on entirely. I'd like you to, because I don't think there's a lot of men out there willing to talk as you are. So again, thank you for being open to that.
That's cool.
When you talk about the struggles, though, is there any of the struggles that you're comfortable sharing here today? Just kind of, off the top of your head.
Yeah.
Depression or whatever.
Yeah. So from a personal, right, obviously, everybody has, different thoughts and processes and everything. And I'm not going to say whether they were dark ones or, those are the kind of things that I will always keep to myself. But the weird thing is that this year was the first time where I was diagnosed with PTSD, or a form of PTSD. And the strange thing is when you go through those experiences, it has such an effect on your body that you don't realize that it's byproducts, for want of a better word. So this is terrifying for me, because obviously I've never been in a live environment to this magnitude and kind of aired, for want of a better word, my story. So there are heightened levels of anxiety. So I think a lot of people assume that if you have one thing go wrong in your life, that therefore once you've dealt with it, it goes away, and it doesn't. It kind of becomes part of your ethos for one. But you start to kind of overcome it. You start to kind of live with it. You recognize when you're going to have a not a great day. Things that will kind of flag up if there's something subconsciously that you're worried about. You know, my wife will pick up on it and kind of go, oh, you know, it's one of those things. So there are little ticks, for want of a better word, kind of, even I don't know that I'm doing them sometimes, but they have become more prominent since that event, shall we say.
Well, I'm glad that you're sharing here. I can only imagine that it's uncomfortable. And just to even the scales, I experience that myself. I struggle with that too. You're not alone, as you probably realized, especially today, given the health pandemic. So, you know, I think on behalf of all of us, thank you for being brave enough to step up and speak about it today.
I think in the midst, especially of this pandemic, we're going to find a lot of doctors and nurses coming out of this, possibly with PTSD, possibly with CPTSD. And so the more we share our stories, for those of us who have gone through anxiety, depression, PTSD, mental health challenges of any kind, sharing our stories, I think just helps us feel less alone. So I know April and Tim and we have faced challenges. And so again, you know, I'm so thrilled that you're here to share your story. And James, it's interesting, in a few weeks, we were actually bringing on a trauma therapist for this very reason, to try and normalize, I guess, for lack of a better word, mental health. Just to know you're not alone. And I have a question for you too, along those lines. What are 3 tips you could give those of us who struggle with PTSD or anxiety that help you overcome day by day?
Okay, so number 1 is give yourself a break. You know, that's the one thing you have to do is you realize, you know, it takes a lot to kind of recognize that you have an issue in the first place. And you know, I'm not kind of claiming to be an expert or, you know, anything like that at all. It's just my personal experience. But I think the moment that you start realizing that something isn't quite right, and you can reach out and get some support or some help, or you tell a friend or family member or whatever, it makes it a little bit easier. And then the more kind of things that you go through make it that much easier every single time. Don't get me wrong, it's not always going to get better overnight. You know, as I said, this happened in 2012, and then, you know, different events it's like a domino effect, I suppose. But it makes you more resilient. It makes you a lot stronger in a weird way, because you kind of realize that when you've been at the depths of those kind of places, it's easier to come back from them, if that makes sense. So yeah, don't be so hard on yourself. Number 2, I love getting outside. You know, I still have the whole gardener kind of, you know, landscaper ethos in me anyway. So I love getting outside and sort of getting into the sunlight, taking photos, doing a little bit of, you know, horticulture here and there. So yeah, so those kind of things, you know, just finding something to take your mind away from it just for a moment, or a safe environment to kind of process it is brilliant. But yeah, I think the other thing is I think, yeah, it's just finding a way to cope, finding a hobby, or, you know, and it's something to occupy your mind, so that when something comes along, you can recognize it and then go and do something different.
And have you seen a therapist to help with the trauma or the PTSD?
Yeah. So I started off initially with psychologists and all of those kind of people, and I had I underwent a treatment called EMDR, which is a very peculiar. You know, it either works for you or it doesn't. It's one of those kind of things. So yeah, so I tried that, but it didn't work for me. But I now see a mental health professional, advocate, whatever you want to. So Mind is the charity here. I don't know if you have them in the States, but Mind is our national sort of mental health awareness charity, I suppose. So I've seen them for a few months now, and they've been phenomenal to me. And ironically, you know, I've kind of started to help them and sort of make regular donations so that I can give something back, so that if somebody else goes through it, then they're not having to worry so much. But yeah, I think finding anyone who is a recognized professional, whether it be a charity, whether it be a doctor, whether it be a friend, you know, just start that kind of ball rolling as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, I love that. And the reason I asked primarily was, again, I said I wanted to normalize, for lack of a better word, mental health challenges, but also to make it okay for all of us to go see a therapist. Sometimes that's the scariest step, to admit that, you know, we have these mental health challenges. Oh my God, I have to ask for help. I'm reaching out for help. And once we get there, we realize, okay, this is what I need. This is it. So thank you for sharing. I appreciate that.
No, you're welcome.
I think Tim might have had a question perhaps, or April, did you have another one about?
No, that's okay. I think Tim's question is transition.
Well, no, I've got something I saw on on Instagram the other day. It's kind of relevant before we transition on, which was somebody put a post up saying anybody who says I don't have mental illness is deluding themselves. It's a bit like saying I don't have illness. I mean, I think the problem with mental health is that it's kind of like only the emergency cases are the ones that get seen mainly in the UK and other places in the US traditionally. So like the non kind of the colds and the COVID-19, well, the COVID-19 would be a case, but the equivalent things in mental health just don't get touched a lot of the time.
I think there's a lot. I think the stigma is getting a lot. There's less of a stigma now. It's getting so much better than what it was, 5 years ago, 2 years ago, even. But I think the thing is like you said, if I had a broken leg, no one would think twice if I said, I have a broken leg and I can't start running. But if you say that there's like something not quite right with your thoughts or your emotions or whatever, there seems to be this kind of unwritten rule that you're an outcast and you're shunned. But I think there's a massive change coming. I think that's the unfortunate thing with the whole scenario at the moment, is obviously there's the clinical kind of thing that's going on, but I think there's going to be a huge detrimental effect with people being sort of under isolation, intensive care and all of those kind of things. There's going to be a lot of issues to deal with when we all get out of lockdown, and I think it's one of those things that you need to recognize sooner rather than later to ensure that we all kind of come out of it in less of a severe kind of scenario, shall we say.
Yeah, I think one of the things, I agree with you, Tim, on that, and hearing you, James, earlier in a comment you were made, because I have worked in the mental health industry for a long time as well, and I used to volunteer and do a lot of public speaking, and I think about the subject, and I think what I would say is kind of what Tim was saying, is that unless it was like, diagnosed schizophrenic, right? It's something that was considered bipolar, something that was very clear and easy and textbook case, that was considered mental illness. And over the years, and thanks to people like yourselves and Christelle and even myself, who's been open about certain issues, they're starting to understand that there's more, more components to having mental health issues. It doesn't mean that you're, that you're suicidal because you're expressing your feelings. It doesn't have to be one extreme or the other. There are just little tiny other aspects to what I call good mental and emotional health. So thankfully, we're starting to see a lot more people talking about those things. I don't know if everybody gets a diagnosis just because they have maybe, my brain is not working again today. Bear with me, guys. But, there's depression that can come and go depending on the circumstance. It's just circumstantial. but it's nice to see that all of these things are now being acknowledged.
Absolutely. Just having these conversations,
for sure,
I believe, and putting this out into the world so that someone who might not realize that they're not alone is helpful. And so each one of us sharing our story, each one of us having our conversation, being able to add to the conversation a little bit, we're not alone. And that makes it feel a whole lot better, because mental health challenges, often we isolate when we are going through mental health challenges, and it can feel very lonely. And so just this conversation alone, I think it helps me, it helps others, and continuing the conversation. So yeah, James, have you had other opportunities to share your story, and where might that have been?
Yeah, so where did I? So we've obviously just come off the Atomicon kind of fringe festival that Andrew and Pete put on, and that was actually my first time I'd ever done anything video at all, or anything that I'd kind of shared my experience with. And so I did a table talk there, because I felt that these current situation, and it was important for people who were losing their businesses and, you know, losing loved ones, and all of these kind of scenarios were coming to the forefront. And I just wanted to, just, you know, don't get me wrong, I'm not one of these people who kind of goes along and wants to shout it from the hilltop and all of that. But at the same time, I wanted people to realize that, you know, just because you can be down here doesn't mean you can't get up here. I feel like Spectre in Suits, you know, you're down here, I want up here. But yeah, I think it's important, like you just said, Christelle. It's important that we share these conversations to make it more, you know, more the norm. I think, you know, everybody has colds, everybody has breakages and stuff. I don't see this as anything different other than just a frailty that's temporary, that you can deal with. And I think April touched on it as well. It's like there's that whole kind of, you know, there's the clinical depression, but then there's also these temporary ones that come and go, you know, ebbs and flows. Or you know, I always, obviously I'm a video freak, you know, I love videos left, right and center. And I always related it to the ironic thing, and I'm going to share this little story with you. So the week before we all went into lockdown, I'd had my normal day-to-day session, and we went in and I sat there, and I compare a lot of my thoughts and my kind of comparisons to films that I see, or kind of things that I can relate to, and I compared this experience, or this journey that I've been on, with the you know, The Perfect Storm with George Clooney, and so I was like that. I was like, you know, every time I see a wave in front of me, I go and hit it, and then there's a bigger wave, and then there's a bigger wave. And the week before lockdown, we were like, oh, well, you know, you've overcome it, you've hit that biggest wave. And I was like, yeah, you know, what else is there going to be in front? And literally, like, the next week, bang, went into lockdown. It's like, yeah. So I had my first session over the phone, and he was like, do you remember what you said to me? I was like, yeah. But that's the thing. I think you have to look at these scenarios and kind of try and put a positive spin on it. You have to kind of make it a little bit more, you know, there is light in the darkness. There is always kind of ways out of these scenarios. So yeah, but I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah. The word I was looking for, it's situational depression. I knew it, but you have to forgive me. I have hormonal changes going on. So from one day to the next, who knows who's going to show up? Some weekends I'm in jail. I don't know.
But that's a good point, April, because there is the situational depression. And to bring that up is a great reminder. And there's also seasonal depression, something I was unaware of until I moved to Portland. I mean, absolutely. And then there's the ongoing. So thank you for bringing that up. That's very true.
Yeah.
You probably don't have as much seasonal depression in California as we do in the UK.
Yeah.
But it's a reality.
But I'm glad you mentioned that, Christelle, because especially for those of us who come from sunnier places, I have a friend in Oregon, and he said, I mean, he was born and raised there, and it wasn't until he kind of got outside of there, I think he said, that he realized, like, oh, this gloom is really hard. So I would be like you. That would be too much for me. I totally get that.
Yeah. Absolutely. I would love to hear about your social media, James. And I'm thinking perhaps Tim was possibly going there, your social media and what you.
Well, I was actually, yeah. I mean, it's you're no longer at the BBC in Radio 4.
No,
You're now working for yourself,
Yeah.
doing stuff.
Yeah.
So talk about your stuff.
Okay. So there is a little segue in there as well, which
Yeah.
you know, I kind of have to drop in because otherwise it looks like I'm just one of these people who's never happy and just flitting from one thing to another.
Yeah.
But yeah, no. So I'd obviously had the Radio 4 thing, and then one of the editors that I'd worked with before had said, "Oh, you know, I've got a project. Do you want to come and help me with it?" I was like, "Yeah, okay. What is it?" And he said, "It's a fishing program on YouTube." I was like, okay, cool. Okay, so we went along and basically I started helping, and then it became clear that we had so much work that everybody got given an episode to edit themselves. So that was my first editing break, like proper version as well. And so we put it out, and it got. I think I checked it the other week, and it was like 342,000 views.
Wow.
Yeah, so we were like kind of looking at it and seeing, a lot of YouTube programs, they exist, but that one just like went, and so I started looking at it and thinking, well, how can I take what I've learned at the BBC with the YouTube and with my previous self-employment and smash it all together and see how it can help smaller businesses with their digital content.
Mm-hmm.
So, and this is ironically how I met Tim, even though he doesn't remember this as well, because I would work in our local supermarket. I would start at 4 a.m. And stack shelves whilst listening to the Social Media Examiner podcast, learning how to, market, how to do various different things online. And I somehow stumbled into a Twitter chat, and that's where I met Tim. And I started engaging, but again, similar to the whole the TV experience, I didn't want to kind of come in and go, "Hey, everybody, I know everything," because I clearly didn't. So I started to kind of watch how things were, and I'd start to engage with people. And I think that was the thing that I needed was the actual community. They kind of took me under their wing. You hear a lot of bad press about Twitter and all of these kind of things. I've been blessed to have found a community and a group of people who have helped me grow a business again out of
Wow.
I mean, it's not just the Twitter chat; it's also Tomicon and various other events. We have a question from the audience. It's a previous guest, so we might as well.
Good question.
Yeah, from Jen Gilmore saying, "Hi James, lovely to hear about your journey. Any tips for YouTube editing? I use iMovie at the moment for mine. I'd like to add some animation."
Good question. And the crowd goes wild.
Okay, so hi Jen, how you doing? Welcome along. So yeah, now I'm going to be completely honest from the forefront. I did start on iMovie, but I don't use it anymore. I am a Adobe Premiere guy. But I know that with animations, and I think it depends on the animation that you're looking to create. I think that there are a lot of many different platforms out there, and I would love to have a chat with you to kind of find out what it is that you're trying to get and create, because I think that's a very different question, I suppose, in a weird way. If you want to do standard transitions, then brilliant. If you're looking for actual 3D animation, then you'd be looking at something like Adobe After Effects or Illustrator, I think is another one. But yeah, so I think I need more detail before I can answer that question, if I'm honest. I'm not trying to shun it. Let's know.
I would consider that a good answer to the question, because it's kind of, I mean, I've used Camtasia for video editing, and you can actually use Canva bizarrely for video editing. At least they've got this beta. It's really I was trying to do it in Canva. It's really painful to do it. Yeah, but Canva's a free thing online, so
Yeah, I mean, there are phenomenal things that you can do in any editing platform anyway.
Yeah.
I mean, I love GIFs. GIFs are the things that you can always find, whenever I'm in a Twitter chat or whatever. Those are the kind of things that I use, but I also make bespoke GIFs for brands and companies. And a lot of those things are just done simply with Photoshop. So you create the image in Photoshop and then you put it on a different layer and then you make a transition and do something else. So there are really simple ways to be able to create something without necessarily using an app, which I'm sure you'd be able to do in iMovie as well. But yeah, as I said, it kind of depends on what you're trying to create in order to be able to answer that question. But yeah, like Tim said, Camtasia is a good one and Canva's great as well.
Yeah. So I'm going to be like, I'm going to try and sell your business in a kind of a weird psychological way. What kind of person would be the ideal person to come up to you and say, I need help with this problem? What problem would they be? What is the problem you were solving with your editing? What kind of thing are you excellent at and brilliant at?
Okay, so I'm the guy who how do I put it? So if you're a small business and I think I was recently chatting to Andrew Davis, Drew Davis.
Yeah.
And he introduced me to Ling's Cars, I think it was. And if you ever want to go and look at something that's completely out of the box, that's brilliant. So I'm that kind of person. If you want to create something that's unique, different, but you don't have a massive budget, so you don't have like the tens of thousands that some of my clients do have, but you still want to create something that's broadcast quality. So that would be the type of person as well, I suppose.
Okay. So are you working mainly with companies now and things like that? Big
yeah. So I've done stuff for Dyson. I've done stuff with BBC. All of these kind of different scenarios we've done. But at the same time, I work with solopreneurs. I work with social media marketers. I work with making making sang. Nicole Osborne. So there are groups of people who I want to say I'm not precious about who I work with. That sounds so wrong. but I love working with everybody. It's as simple as that. If you've got a project that sounds awesome, then I want to get it buzzing.
You are buzzing digital online, I think.
Yeah. So it did. I'll let you into a little secret. I did start as Buzzcut because I was an editor / drone pilot. But I think people were thinking that I had like a grade 2 shaved head and that I had opinions that maybe other people wouldn't adhere to. So I changed it. But it's buzzing digital is what I do. I like to make a buzzing digital for brands and companies and individuals, no matter what they do. So yeah.
And I like it. Your design is kind of like a tagger art, right?
Yeah. So I'm, as I said, I like to dabble. I like the rule breakers like Boba Fett and things like that. They're the good guys, but they don't necessarily conform to the kind of ways that everybody else does. Street artists and kind of slam poets, all of these kind of people, hip hop, all of that kind of ethos in that. That background is who I am, but I like to use that with my marketing strategies as well. I like to kind of help people think outside the box and do a little bit more guerrilla marketing, I suppose.
Guerrilla marketing, I like that. So so you mostly, I want to make sure I understand what you do, mostly create digital content, right?
Yeah.
So do you Dyson comes to you, you help them kind of like marketing and advertising, think outside of the box, and then you create all of the digital content after with working with them directly in their feedback? Is that what you do? A commercial, 30-second commercials?
So with Dyson, I was part of a team that we were brought in. I would do the editing, and then we had producers who would, Dyson company that have their own marketing department. They don't let outsiders kind of come in. So they give us the content to work with. But with other brands, we tend to go out filming. We go out and shoot stuff. We'll kind of have fun with it. We'll literally turn up for a couple of days and do a proper good shoot, and then we'll come back and play. Try and create stuff that is is unique. It's, you know, but we don't, I say we, you know, there's only me and my wife. Sounds random, but we have a big group of freelancers and a network of other social media managers that we use as well. So it's more of a community that comes together to create that. So
you bring kind of their vision, or the vision they may not have even realized they had, to fruition then.
Exactly. So you know, it might be someone like, you know, I worked with TEDx in Bristol, so I was part of their team. So we would go in and we would think differently, and we were like, right, okay, how can we be unique with this idea? So we were thinking, well, could we do like virtual TEDx and stuff, or we might work with, you know, a local balloon fiesta, where we would do a time lapse and things. You know, it's simple things that, but it is instantaneous as well. So a lot of our stuff is live content from location as well. So, you know, I work at Glastonbury, so Glastonbury is one of those ones where we have, you know, content that needs to go out 24/7. So
so you mentioned that you work with your wife. So inquiring minds want to know, how's it going? Do you recommend it? What would you say? The wife, I'm sure it's all great, but everybody always asks that when you meet couples who work together and then they live together. My husband and I actually do great, but not everybody. I know people who have said, you know, I'm ready to choke my husband. I can't do this. We gotta go in separate directions. How's that going for you, and what advice would you have for people contemplating creating a business together?
Okay, so I'm blessed because of the journey that we've been through together anyway. So we have a very different, unique understanding, I suppose. But she's my I don't know, my regulator is probably the best way to describe it, because, you know, I can have all these crazy ideas, and then she'll go, look, just rein it in a bit, you know, just calm it down and just try and think whether or not that it's going to be a idea that will, you know, it's great for me to think it, but she brings the sensibility to it. You know, so the brains and the balance is all her, whereas, you know, the creative kind of out of the box crazy strategies is me.
Wow. So we've got a sense and sensibility thing going on here.
Yeah.
I love it.
When you go live, is she with you on the field? And where do you go live? Facebook, YouTube?
Yeah, no. So she keeps herself in the shadows. So she has a proper job that she does as well as this. So yeah, a lot of it is left to me. And I think, you know, it's you know, I'm going to be honest, it's a journey that's still in its infancy. You know, I've been doing this for, you know, coming up for a couple of years now. And I've been very fortunate, as I said, with the people that I've worked with, to be able to achieve content that a lot of people wouldn't be able to do. But yeah, you know, she does pull the strings from afar, let's put it that way. So it doesn't, even if she's not there, she's always, you know, always part of it.
Expect to see this big string pulling you out of the room. You said or not?
That's amazing. And I had another question. When you go live, we're learning how to go live, as you can see. This is new for us as well. When you go live for companies, is that YouTube? Is that Facebook? Is that...
Yeah, we do a lot of Facebook lives. So yeah, I think up until recently, I think that was probably the one stable platform that everybody would go to. You had, you know, you could be in any environment, but everybody would be across Facebook. I think over the last sort of 6 to 8 months, a lot of people like StreamYard have come in, and they've kind of encouraged people to utilize these platforms. Obviously, Zoom at the moment is smashing it, and, you know, this rise of video is coming. You know, we've all been in social media for a long time, where people have said, you know, you want to be in video, and I think everybody was like, really? But now it seems as if, you know, over the last 8 weeks, everybody is doing video. More difficult in a weird way, because obviously there's so much more noise around to be heard through. But yeah, I think certainly, you know, things like StreamYard and Facebook Live have still kind of got the edge a little bit, I think.
Yeah, I mean, you don't want to be doing, oh no, not another live show, really.
Too late, you've got that market corner.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, you've been behind. I mean, you like when you're talking about live, you're kind of the guy behind the scenes helping out and making sure it happens.
Yeah.
I was going to go back to, because you obviously were working on television, then you were working on radio, and now you're working on YouTube, and presumably you were doing sort of audio work for Radio 4, were you? Or
yeah. So
I mean, how was the experience of all of those three different things different? I mean, obviously TV, I'm guessing there's a lot more kind of high complicated than YouTube, is it, or is it similar?
I think the difference is, and I think April, you'll get this because I know that you've got a similar background as well. I think the difference is when you're in a media environment, they all tend to kind of operate in a similar way. They all have back offices that specialize in, you know, whether it be a animation department or a dubbing or you know, a production manager, or everybody has their integral part of that production. Which means that you, even though you are part and parcel of the whole collaboration, you are only initially partly responsible for a very small chunk of it. The advantage that I had was that I was in the TV environment, that I worked with the dubbing mixers, the graders, the producers, the directors. All of these kind of people would come to me, and I would still have to produce the content to be able to go out onto the websites, etc. Radio is similar as well. I think the advantage that allows me to that gave me was to bring a production value to social media. I think if you're a social media person, then you may not necessarily have a level of production value that you would have in TV, but you don't have the restrictions that you would have had you in that kind of environment. So it's a double-edged sword in a weird way.
Right, totally. You know, I was thinking when I was listening to you, especially when I was thinking back to when I was going to school, landing a job like you did is not easy to do. But then you disassociated yourself and you moved on. For some, getting that job at BBC, I mean, it's like CNN here, right? I mean, once you got it, most people don't want to leave, even if they want to leave. And I know people at CNN in post-production who do want to leave, but it's such a good job, they don't. So why did you leave? I know you had some setbacks. Is that what it was that triggered that move?
Yeah. So obviously the personal journey for me was a factor. You know, I think the other thing, as you'll understand, is TV is a very, well, media as a whole is a very unforgiving beast at the best of times. You know, even though you're scheduled to work certain hours, you end up staying way past those hours, and you know, if you tend to lose touch of your family, and you tend to lose touch of yourself to a degree as well. And so I think I was very fortunate to be in the right place at the right time, to be able to be introduced to YouTube, which then allowed me to kind of take the creative juices that I'd learned, and then transition into doing this now. So it was kind of like, you know, all of those scenarios that had not quite hit the mark allowed me to now come back and go, right, okay, do you know what? I love to be working on my own and working as a small business. I love to be creative. I love to do video and all of these things. So it was like the perfect storm all came together, and then suddenly I ended up doing this. And yeah, I've been very fortunate to do it ever since. So.
And you're right, having that background is beneficial, because what you said is true. Somebody who's really great editing for YouTube or social media might not be able to get into the business, but once you're in the business, you're bringing great quality to small business. So that's pretty cool. Yeah,
it's great, and you know, it allows you to have that production value that you can say to people, you know, you wouldn't necessarily go and look at a scenario and go, right, okay, well, you know, have you done your cutaways? Have you done enough pickups? Have you left that 30 seconds of additional time to make sure that you don't cut off the end of whatever you're saying? And I think that's the difference, you know, when you see a lot of people who send content to us and they go, well, you know, I need you to edit this for me, and you're kind of looking at it and you're going, I wish you had done that first. So now I kind of act as an almost as a consultant to a lot of people, where they come and go, right, how do I do this? How can I film better content? What stuff can I do? And so yeah, I kind of take everything that I picked up along the way and just offer it to them instead.
And as a follow-up to April's question a little bit, do you take international clients?
Yeah, definitely. So I think the advantage that we all have is that, you know, we don't restrict. Social media is you know, it's a global thing. It consists of zeros and ones. It's not timelines. It's not, you know, anything like that. So no, I have clients that are in Canada. I have clients that are in Brussels. I have, you know, so I have various different people across various different time zones. But, you know, the good thing is video can go out at any time of the day. It's just making sure that you schedule the right content, but having the right content in the first place.
Right.
So what is the biggest, sorry, April, but what's the biggest mistake you see people making in video from your kind of expert production hat point of view that you think, oh no?
I like that question.
Yeah. I think, you know, lighting is one. You know, you can always say lighting. My bugbear more than absolutely anything is audio. I think audio is key to everything. It doesn't matter, you know, what content you have. If you don't have good audio, then you're not going to be able to achieve as much as you would like to. I think the advantage with having a decent mic, or, you know, a soundproof room. Obviously, this is not my ideal environment. You can thank lockdown for this. But yeah, I think you know, having good audio allows you to create so much more content, whether it be video, whether it be, you know, you can take sound bites, you can take, you know, using waves and create little snippets for Instagram. You can create a podcast. All of these kind of things rely upon audio. You can't do that with video. If you lose that kind of, you know, that additional extra, you can, you know, the amount of stuff that we've kind of waved goodbye because the audio was unusable. I know that a lot of people say captions are great, but captions, you know, without any audio is not great.
Yeah, I agree with you. I've seen that. I've actually been guilty of that. One of the first mistakes I ever made as a newbie was I went out and did an interview and forgot to turn the mic on. Which is very common, as you probably know, right?
Yeah. I mean, you know, with the amount of times, as I said, you know, I've been out, and I think that's the other thing that I will say to anybody who's doing content: don't be afraid to make mistakes. You know, that's one thing that you need to do, because if you don't make mistakes, you can never learn how to improve and make it better. And as I said, you know, this community has allowed me to be called out on things that I always thought I knew, but I was wrong on. But I think, you know, with the audio thing, the amount of times we've left the onboard mic on and as the source, and then kind of not picked up on the level or whatever, and then you go on, you know, so you have to kind of just hold your hands up every now and again and go, I'm really sorry, I screwed up, and then you'll do a retake, etc. But yeah, be happy to make mistakes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. We had May King on last week, and she discussed the same thing. Make mistakes, jump in, and we kind of all agreed we have to jump, we have to make those mistakes in order to fly, in order to move forward. So
100%.
Yeah,
agree.
you don't keep making the mistakes though. That's
no.
You work out you're making mistakes and you stop making them, make different mistakes.
Absolutely. Be brave. Be brave enough to make the mistakes. Be brave enough to fall and get ourselves back up. Hi, Tim Sohn.
We're getting everybody coming at the end.
Hi, Christy.
I don't know. The fact that they're all coming at the end might impact our self-esteem here.
Well, they're making this mistake once. If they make it again,
right?
Okay.
They're like towards the last 10 minutes.
No. I know we have about 5 minutes left, so quick questions for James, if anyone has them from our viewers.
You can ask him about Star Wars characters, even though he obviously dresses in Mandalorian outfit as Boba Fett at the weekend.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. That's funny. Totally. When I saw you, I was like skater, thug, artist. I don't know, James. Can we trust you?
Probably not, April. To be no, I think I think that's the one thing I liked. I don't have any airs or graces. I don't pretend to be something that I'm not. I think the difference. What are you guys talking about?
What are you guys talking about?
But no, I think it's so. The one thing that I've found in all of these kind of experiences is, trying to be something that you're not, you get found out so quickly.
Right.
So I'm happy to kind of go, do you know what? I don't know about this, or I don't know about that, because it allows me to go and learn. But yeah, there's no point trying to pretend to be something that I'm not, And I dress up as Leia. I don't dress up as a Mandalorian.
Well, then I can't trust you.
Yeah, exactly.
You're definitely one of our kind of peeps.
Absolutely. James, where can we find you on the internet? What is your website? What is your blog?
So I'm across all social media platforms as @BuzzingDigital. So I predominantly hang out on Twitter, although I'm dabbling more on Instagram. I'm liking Instagram at the moment for some reason. I don't know. I like to get out with my cameras and stuff. So it's kind of ebbing and flowing. Obviously, my filming seems to have stopped for a bit. So, but yeah, so you can find me there and buzzingdigital.com.
Buzzingdigital.com.
Yeah,
put that in let's put it in the comments. Buzzingdigital.com, exactly how it sounds.
Yeah, but no G.
Wonderful.
Buzzin'. Very cool. I'm so glad you came on, James.
You invited me. It was awesome.
So nice to have you here.
So nice to have the conversation flowing and be able to meet you digitally, I suppose, but real digitally, and hear your story and be able to have this conversation. So thank you, James, very much for joining us.
Thank you for having me, and thanks for going easy on me as well. I appreciate it.
And now, if you want to have a panic attack, now's a good time to have one, because we're
you could just show what that looks like for our audience. That would really I think that would garner some likes, right?
Yeah. Do you know? Literally, I came prepared. Like, I've got a Star Wars. I've got a cup of tea. I've even got a bottle of water and a beer, just in case. I didn't know what to kind of bring. So.
That beer is going to be right after we end this, right? You're like, I need this.
Yeah. If I'd been conscientious, I would have had outro video as well, but I haven't done that yet. So.
Love your intro.
3 points for Tim's show now.
There was a question I saw about Jar Jar Binks.
Yeah,
it was from Chrissy Buck, and it's kind of, and the answer is no, it wouldn't change anything.
I've always heard that, I don't know about you guys, but I've always heard that there's some kind of underlying toe that Jar Jar was going to be like a kind of one of the additional specialists, shall we say?
Well, I saw this video that made a convincing case that he was actually a Sith Lord, which is quite funny because he pretended to be all accidental and the rest of it, and then he's changing things by falling over in particular places and the rest of it.
Standing on, shooting loads of people. So yeah, I don't know, but yeah, no, I don't think it would have changed anything.
No, well, he was supposed to be bigger in the second film, but they sort of demoted him after the reaction to the first film. So,
I like Jar Jar. I think there's a little bit of a striking resemblance between the two of us. Clumsy, all over the place. My husband and I are actually, we never saw the last Star Wars, the very last one. So over the weekend, we started watching the first of the latest 3 trilogies. And, I'd totally forgotten how fun those movies are. And so we were up like total college students, like till 3 a.m. snacking, you know, all the loud noise coming from the Star Wars. But I said to my husband, I forget how good those are until I see them again.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's the thing. It's nice. I think this whole lockdown is allowing people to go back to the videos that their childhood was, and kind of, you know, pass on the baton. You know, we've started with our daughters watching, you know, the whole Marvel kind of cinematic universe
Yeah.
but yeah, you know, it's crazy that you kind of. I've made my daughter watch. Do you remember? You might remember this. Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends with Firestar and Iceman. But she's actually looking at it.
Yeah.
Yeah, but she's looking at it from a physics point of view and going, well, he can't be sending out in front because he'd be going in. So I'm kind of using that as my homeschooling.
Yeah.
Oh, how old are your daughters? Oh, go ahead, Krista. How old are your daughters?
So I've got two. One's 11 and one's 7. So
Oh, wow.
they're in the other room at the moment learning how to paint Gauguin, I believe.
Yeah.
We are.
I was thinking like, is that some sort of Japanese character? And then I realised you're talking about the painter.
Chrissy Buck put on, we are watching the Marvel movies in order as well. We are at Guardians 2 in the order.
Very nice.
I watched the films I hadn't seen, which is about 4 of them on the MCU one, and then rewatched the last 2 again. I've rewatched Infinity War and Endgame about like 6 times. So yeah, just love them as films. Anyway, we'll probably have to bring James back and just talk about Star Wars for a whole hour.
Star Wars movies and homeschooling.
Yeah.
Bring them up.
It was great to have you on, and Christelle has put your. Hopefully, this is your website. Confirm this is your website.
That is.
Yeah.
Yay.
And yes, imagine there's some exciting exit video playing now, and I'm going to press the end broadcast button.
Thank you, viewers. Thank you for the conversation.